Hello everyone, welcome to Mean Life Studies. In this video, I'm going to solve one more SQL problem as part of Data Analyst or Data Engineer interview preparation series. That is question number 38, return customer IDs who did the highest transaction amount difference from their first and last transaction amounts. Okay, and it is given a transaction data. You can see here we have transaction ID, customer ID, transaction amount, transaction date, right? Now, what we have to return? We have to return those customer IDs who did the highest transaction amount difference. That means here, if you observe, we have different customers are making some transaction on different dates, right? You can see their amounts, but we need to return the highest variation from their first and last transaction amount, right? So we have to find what is the first transaction for each customer and the last transaction for each customer, and then we need to find the difference between those two values for each customer, right? So here you need not to consider either negative values, because of here it could be the first transaction could be the highest or last transaction could be the highest, no words, right? So therefore we will be using absolute. Okay, now we are going to solve this problem in SSMS. Okay, and those concepts you can see here we are going to cover. These are the concepts to solve this particular problem, that is CTEs, window functions and math function. Okay, now we will start solving this problem in SSMS. Now you can see here, this is the transaction data. I already created this table and this is the data I already inserted into it. Okay. Now, and these statements I'm going to share in the description box. You can find from there. Okay. Now, if I run this query, you can see here, this is the exact data, right? Now, what we have to return? We have to return the highest, we have to return those customer IDs who's making highest variation from their first to last, first and the last transaction amounts. Okay, for that we have to return what is the first transaction amount for particular customer IDs and what is the last transaction amount for particular customer IDs, and we need to find the difference between those two values. Okay, and then we are going to assign a rank on the basis of the highest variation among those two values. Okay, now you can see what we have to return. So this is the table. Now we have to find the first transaction amount for each customer. In the first step you have to find first transaction, right? So that for that I'm going to use window functions, that is first value and last value concept. These are the two window functions will be used to find the first and last values of any responses. Okay, now I'm going to use here, I'm selecting all data from this transaction table, and also I'm just returning one more column as first value. Okay, first value of what? We are going to return the first value of transaction amount, right? So that's why we have to mention it, transaction amount. Okay, over, because of this is a window function, right? We have to add over class. What we are finding? We are finding the first value of transaction amount for each customer ID, right? So we have to use partition by customer ID, right? And also we need to find the order, in which order we are defining it. The first transaction amount in the sense the first transaction date, right? Those customer who did the transaction on the first day in the sense, they are going to do some transactions in different dates, right? Among those dates we are choosing the first date. Okay, how we can define? We define the order by transaction date in ascending order, right? So to find the first values for each customer we have to use partition by customer ID, right? And then we are defining the order, in which order we are finding the first transaction on the basis of transaction date, right? So we have to mention order by transaction date in ascending order, right? Now we are going to mention this as, okay, I'm just writing down as first value, okay, FV from transactions. Okay, now if I execute this query, you can see here, if you observe carefully, we have different transaction IDs, different customers, different transaction amount, dates, and we are return first value of transaction amount, right? For each customer. If you observe here, all this 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So this particular customer did some transactions on this particular dates, right? So we are defining the first value means among these dates, these particular customer, the first date, right? This is the first date and this is the first value. So that is why we are returning this 8,000 here. You can see as first value, right? For this particular customer, right? Next, for second customer, customer ID 2, if you observe, this is the lowest date, right? You can see these are the two lowest dates. Okay, so that is why it is returning 25,000, right? Next, you can see in the third customer, this is the second date, right? I mean, September 2nd is the lowest one for this particular customer, right? Right. This is the amount. We are returning first value as that 10,000. Okay. Similarly, this is also first value, right? So these are the first values for each customer. I mean, first transaction amount. Okay. Similarly, we have to find what is the last transaction amount. That is on the basis of date only, right? This date only, this amount, right? So this is the last transaction amount for this particular customer, and here this will be the last, right? So we have to return those particular values also, right? Now I'm just writing here, comma, here what we have to return, last transaction amount, right? So we have to use last value of transaction amount over. If you use here also is the same concept, but you should understand that here flow in this direction, right? So that's why even the first value represents always the first, but if you are considering the last value when you are flowing in this direction, each record will be considered as the last one, right? But we should not consider that way. So that is the reason we need to define all rows are already existing. So we have to consider some range of window records. Okay, now you can see we have to use partition by to find for each customer, right? Partition by customer ID. In which order? Order by transaction date in ascending order. Okay, but here we have, okay, for example, just assume as last value. Okay, now if I execute this query, what is this error? Transaction amount spelling might be mistake. Now you can see here we are getting the last value for each record. You can see up to now what is the last value? 8,000. So that is why it is returning 8,000. Next one, this one we are returning 9,000. This one returning 15,000. That means we are flowing in this direction. For each record will be considered as the last value, right? So we need to ensure that all records are existing, right? So that's where we need to define the range of records. Okay, that means you have to consider rows between either current record to unbounded records or else unbounded preceding to unbounded following. Okay, you can consider anything, no problem. Okay, I'm just considering here unbounded preceding and unbounded following also. This means either no problem. Here, even if you are returning here also, it is going to consider all before and all after. I mean, all existing data it is going to consider. Okay. Now, this means unbounded preceding and unbounded following. Okay. As last value. Okay. I already defined there. Now, if you look at this data, now we are returning for each customer the last amount. You can see here we are returning, right? 25 here. What is this last amount? 18,000. You can see we are getting last value. Here also 1,000. What is the last value? 6,000, right? Here we are getting 6,000 as last value. You can see last value. Okay. Here also 9,500, right? You can see we are getting 9,500. You should be very careful in defining because of we are going through this direction, right? This direction is transaction date we are considering. Okay. So you need to define all records are existing while you are finding especially last value. Okay, now we have first values and last values, right? What we have to find? We have to find the difference between first transaction amount and last transaction amount, right? So I'm just considering this table as CTE, with CTE as this entire table I'm just considering as CTE. Okay, Now what I have to return? I have to return only customer IDs whose spending, who's taking a maximum variation between the first and the last transaction amount, right? So I'm just considering only customer ID, first value and last value. These two values are nothing but first transaction amount and last transaction amount. Okay, I'm just considering those three columns from this table. Okay, customer ID, comma, FV, comma, LV from city. Okay, now if I execute entire query, you can see here we are getting each customer with first values and last values, right? If you observe, all are duplicates, right? You can see all are duplicates remaining, right? So I'm just considering here distinct. Okay, now you can see we will get only for those customer whose first transaction and last transaction amounts, right? So now what we have to return? We have to find, first we have to find the difference between these two amounts. Okay. Now I'm going to consider again city 2 as this table. Okay. Next I need to return all this data and also first value minus last value. It could be anything. You can consider last value minus first value also. So there is a chance that we will get some negative values, right? So to avoid that, we are using absolute. Okay, absolute of, this is a mathematical function, right? Absolute of first value minus last value as difference transaction amount. Okay, from city to. Now if I execute all this, now you can see we are getting it, right? So these are the values, the difference between the first and the last transaction amounts. We need to return those particular customer IDs who's having the highest difference between first and last transaction amount, right? So how can we return? Either you can just use, just return all this data in descending order, right? Or else you can assign rankings also, right? So I'm just considering again this as CTE3 as this one. Okay, select star, comma, I'm assigning rankings. Okay, you can use rank or dense rank, but it is always preferable to use dense rank because of we don't know how many people are having the same different transaction amounts. Okay, dense rank. Okay, over order by what? This difference transaction amount, right? Difference transaction amount in descending order, right? Because of we are finding the highest one, right? So that's why we are ordering this into, in descending order as DRNK from CT2. Sorry, CT3, right? CT3. Now if I execute entire, what is this error? Invalid column in difference. Okay, there might be a spelling mistake. Order by difference. I'm just copying this, pasting here. Now you can see here, we are assigned the rankings on the basis of difference transaction amount between first and last transaction amount, right? So from this, we have to just filter out the data whose rank is 1, right? That is defined the highest difference, that is 7,000 is the highest one, right? So we need to return only those customer whose difference is highest from first to last transaction amount. Okay. Next, I'm going to consider this as another city 4 as this one. Okay, next select only customer ID from CTE4 where DRNK equal to 1, right? Now if we execute this entire query, you can see now we are getting a customer ID 2 and he is the one who's spending the highest. He's making some wide variation between the first and the last transaction amount. Okay, I hope you understood, right?